Before steel, before glass, before the Tokyo skyline pierced the clouds, there was wood. For centuries, Japan was a nation built not on concrete, but on craftsmanship. Long before modernity arrived, Japan's landscapes were dominated by temples, castles, and houses shaped by the elements. The country's builders learned to live with nature, not to fight it. Mountains, earthquakes, and typhoons taught them humility. And from that humility, a unique philosophy of construction emerged, one that valued impermanence, harmony, and resilience. The earliest Japanese settlements, dating back to the Yayoi and Kofun periods, 300 BCE, 538 CE, used simple wooden posts and thatched roofs. Over time, these techniques evolved into the refined architecture of the Asuka and Nara periods, when Buddhism arrived from China and Korea. With it came stone foundations, pagodas, and the first great temples, the Horyu-ji in Nara, built in 607 CE, still stands today as the world's oldest surviving wooden structure. Wood was the soul of Japan. It was flexible enough to withstand earthquakes, renewable in a land rich with forests, and spiritually linked to the Shinto belief that gods, kami, resided in natural materials. Even the grandest palaces were built to breathe, to move, to yield. By the Heian period, 794–1185, architecture reflected elegance and order. Kyoto, then Heian-kyo, became a city of precision, laid out on a grid inspired by the Chinese capital of Chang'an. The aristocracy built sprawling villas and palaces with open verandas overlooking manicured gardens. The Japanese aesthetic of wabi-sabi, beauty in imperfection and transience, was born here. But peace never lasted long. From the 12th century onward, civil wars and rival clans reshaped Japan into a land of fortresses. The Sengoku period, 1467–1603, an age of constant conflict, turned construction into a form of defense. Massive stone bases supported tall wooden castles, symbols of power rising above rice fields and rivers. Among them, the Himeji Castle, completed in 1609, became the masterpiece of feudal Japan, elegant yet impenetrable, a monument of both war and grace. The arrival of the Tokugawa shogunate, 1603–1868, brought peace, and with it, the greatest expansion of physical construction in Japan's pre-modern history. Under Tokugawa rule, the country closed itself from the world for more than 2 centuries, sakoku, focusing inward on roads, bridges, and cities. The Tokaido Road, stretching from Edo, modern Tokyo, to Kyoto, became the backbone of the nation, a 500-kilometer artery linking power and culture. Post stations, inns, and wooden bridges lined the route, built with precision and artistry. Edo grew rapidly, from a fishing village to one of the world's largest cities by the 18th century. Its wooden houses crowded narrow streets, while waterways and canals carried goods and people. The city's skyline was not defined by height, but by rhythm: tiled roofs, bamboo lattices, paper doors, and the constant hum of daily life. Yet Edo's beauty carried danger. The same wood that gave it warmth also made it fragile. Fires, earthquakes, and floods struck repeatedly, earning Edo the grim nickname City of Fires. But each time its people rebuilt, faster and stronger. By the mid-19th century, Japan's architecture stood at a crossroads, suspended between timeless tradition and the storm of modernity approaching from the west. The country's walls were wooden, but its spirit was steel. When the black ships of Commodore Matthew Perry appeared in Edo Bay in 1853, bringing Western technology and demand for trade, Japan's centuries of isolation shattered overnight. The age of feudal craftsmanship was ending. A new age of construction, industrial, ambitious, and global, was about to begin. When the winds of the 19th century swept across Asia, they carried with them the hum of factories, the shriek of steam engines, and the unmistakable scent of change. For over 2 centuries, Japan had remained sealed within its wooden walls, isolated, self-sufficient, and serene. But in 1853, the black smoke of Commodore Perry's ships rose over Edo Bay, and the world came knocking. Within 15 years, everything would change. The old Tokugawa shogunate collapsed, and a new banner rose, that of the Meiji Emperor, only 15 years old, but symbolizing a rebirth. The year 1868 marked the Meiji Restoration, the most rapid transformation in Japan's history, a national construction project that turned an agrarian society into a modern industrial power in a single generation. The motto of the new era was clear: Fukoku Kyohei, enrich the country, strengthen the army. To survive in a world ruled by empires, Japan would have to build, not just weapons, but cities, factories, and railways. Western engineers, architects, and educators arrived from Britain, Germany, and the United States, bringing blueprints, steel, and science. The Japanese studied relentlessly. They sent delegations abroad, the Iwakura Mission, 1871-1873, to learn how the great nations built themselves. When those men returned, they did not imitate. They adapted. The results were immediate. In 1872, Japan opened its first railway line, connecting Shimbashi, Tokyo, and Yokohama. It was only 29 kilometers long, but it symbolized a nation on the move. Steam engines roared across the countryside that once echoed with the clip of samurai horses. Tokyo, reborn from Edo, became a construction site of modernity. Brick replaced wood. Gas lamps illuminated the streets. The first telegraph lines connected cities. Foreign-style buildings rose beside ancient temples. Western domes and columns alongside tiled roofs. The Tokyo Station, the Ministry of Justice building, and the Bank of Japan showcased the birth of a new architectural language, Wakon Yosai, Japanese spirit, Western technique. At the same time, industry exploded. New factories produced textiles, ships, and weapons. Shipyards at Yokosuka, ironworks in Kamaishi, and arsenals in Osaka became the foundations of industrial Japan. By the 1890s, Japan had built not only railroads, but entire cities dedicated to production. The transformation was not limited to steel and stone. Education became the scaffolding of progress. In 1872, the Gakusei Law established Japan's first nationwide public school system. Within a few decades, literacy soared above 90%, the highest in Asia. A country that once trained warriors now trained engineers. The Meiji government understood that true strength came from infrastructure. They built ports, telegraph lines, post offices, universities, and even mapped the nation's mountains with Western precision. In 1879, the Meiji government launched the Survey Department, creating Japan's first modern topographical maps, the blueprint for all future construction. But not all structures were material. Japan was also building something invisible, a national identity. The emperor's image appeared in every school. The idea of progress became sacred. The people began to see themselves as architects of destiny. By the early 1900s, Tokyo and Osaka had transformed from wooden towns into steel and brick metropolises. Streetcars clattered over cobblestones, and telephone poles lined the boulevards. Bridges spanned rivers once crossed by ferries. The sound of hammers and steam had replaced the quiet rhythm of bamboo and rain. When Japan defeated Russia in 1905, the world finally understood. This once feudal nation had built itself into a modern power. The miracle of Meiji was complete. Yet beneath the triumph lay a quiet tension between tradition and progress, between the wooden heart of old Japan and the iron will of the new. The temples still stood beside the railways, watching silently as the age of machines took root. Japan had built its foundation. The question was whether it could endure the storms to come. The dawn of the Taisho era, 1912-1926, brought promise and uncertainty. Japan had modernized at lightning speed, but steel and ambition alone could not shield it from nature, war, or fate. Tokyo had become a symbol of progress. Brick buildings, gas lamps, and streetcars lined its avenues. Yet beneath this new face lay a fragile foundation, a city built on soft soil and wooden homes, where the air always seemed to carry the ghost of fire. That ghost returned on September 1st, 1923. At 11:58 a.m., the great Kanto earthquake struck. In just minutes, Tokyo and Yokohama were reduced to ashes. The tremors toppled buildings, and the fires that followed swept through the capital with hurricane speed. More than 100,000 people perished. 2/3 of Tokyo burned. The modern city, once a symbol of progress, became a sea of rubble. But from that ruin, Japan did what it had always done. It rebuilt. Within days, emergency shelters rose in public parks. Architects and engineers, both Japanese and Western, joined forces to plan a safer, stronger city. The Imperial Capital Reconstruction Project, 1923 to 1930, became Japan's first modern urban planning initiative. Wide boulevards replaced narrow alleys. Concrete and brick replaced wood. The new Tokyo was designed to survive earthquakes and fire, a city reborn from its own ashes. By the 1930s, the skyline shimmered once more. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building, Mitsubishi's Marunouchi offices, and Ginza's Art Deco storefronts reflected a cosmopolitan modernity. Trains ran on time, neon lights glowed, and the city seemed invincible again. But this time, the danger did not come from beneath the earth. It came from the sky. Japan's expansion into Asia brought both pride and peril. The drive to industrialize shifted toward militarization. Factories that once made trains and ships now built tanks and aircraft. Cities became arsenals. Workers became soldiers. When war engulfed the Pacific, Japan's cities transformed again, not by choice, but by fire. By 1944, the United States had turned its sights on Japan's home islands. In March 1945, the Tokyo firebombing began, the deadliest air raid in human history. More than 100,000 people were killed in one night. Wooden homes turned to kindling under the reign of incendiaries. The city that had been rebuilt twice in a generation was once again a furnace. Osaka, Kobe, Nagoya, and Yokohama followed. Each bombing erased entire districts, bridges, schools, temples, hospitals, gone in hours. And then came August 1945, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. 2 atomic bombs, 2 cities erased from the map. The destruction was beyond imagination. By war's end, more than 60 Japanese cities had been leveled. Nearly 40% of the nation's urban area lay in ruins. Railways were twisted metal, bridges collapsed, ports shattered. Japan had lost not only a war, but its infrastructure, its homes, its dignity. Yet even as the smoke rose, something deeper endured, an unspoken faith in rebuilding. People began clearing debris the very next day. Children carried bricks, engineers sketched on scraps of paper, farmers returned to fields scorched by fire. In the words of one Tokyo resident recorded by NHK in 1945, "We had nothing left, but we still had each other, and that was enough to start again." The American occupation that followed would bring aid, reform, and an opportunity to rebuild from zero. Japan had been burned to its foundation, but as history had already proven, foundations can be rebuilt. And in the years to come, this broken nation would rise faster than anyone thought possible, forging highways, bullet trains, skyscrapers, and dreams, all from the rubble of defeat. The world would soon call it a miracle, but in Japan it would simply be called hard work. When the fires of war finally faded, Japan lay in ruins. Cities once alive with the sound of trains and laughter were silent. Factories were rubble. Bridges collapsed into black rivers. And yet, amid the ashes, a quiet determination took root. The American occupation under General Douglas MacArthur, 1945-1952, introduced sweeping reforms. Land was redistributed, industries reorganized, and education rebuilt. But what truly transformed Japan was not politics. It was construction. In 1946, Tokyo was still a skeleton city. More than a quarter of its population was homeless. People built shelters from tin and bamboo, scavenged bricks from ruins, and used paper as insulation. But the Japanese spirit, shaped by centuries of earthquakes and disaster, refused to surrender. Reconstruction began with the essentials: roads, railways, and housing. The Japanese National Railways was re-established, repairing thousands of kilometers of track destroyed by bombings. The Tokyo metropolitan government began modern zoning, expanding streets and adding public housing projects. By the early 1950s, the first modern apartment complexes, danchi, began rising across the nation. Built from reinforced concrete, they symbolized both safety and progress. Each unit had running water, electricity, and kitchens, luxuries in post-war Japan. They became the homes of a new middle class. Then came the miracle. Fueled by U.S. aid, innovation, and relentless work ethic, Japan's economy surged in what historians now call the Japanese economic miracle. From 1955 to 1973, the country's GDP grew at an average of 10% per year, the fastest in the world. And as the economy rose, so did the skyline. Concrete replaced wood, glass replaced paper. The cities of Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya turned into living construction sites. The Tokyo Tower, completed in 1958, became the symbol of rebirth, a beacon of optimism. At 333 meters tall, it stood higher than the Eiffel Tower, built not for defense or war, but for broadcasting and unity. When Tokyo hosted the 1964 Olympic Games, the world saw a city reborn. New expressways looped through skyscrapers, the Shinkansen bullet train connected Tokyo and Osaka, and neon lights painted the skyline. The same nation that lay in ashes 19 years earlier was now a symbol of modern efficiency. Architects like Kenzo Tange redefined the very idea of rebuilding. His designs, including the Yoyogi National Gymnasium and Tokyo Metropolitan Government Complex, fused modernism with Japanese minimalism, creating a style both futuristic and spiritual. Tange's vision reflected a nation balancing technology with tradition, steel with serenity. By the 1970s, Japan's cities had become centers of innovation. Osaka hosted the 1970 World Expo, showcasing the city of the future. Futuristic megastructures, suspended highways, and experimental metabolist architecture captured the imagination of the world. The metabolists, a group of visionary architects led by Kisho Kurokawa and Fumihiko Maki, believed that cities should grow like living organisms, adaptable, flexible, and eternal. Their creations, capsule buildings, modular towers, were expressions of Japan's resilience and creativity. At the same time, the government invested heavily in public works, dams, power plants, and highways. The Tomei Expressway, completed in 1969, connected Tokyo and Nagoya, reducing a day's journey to hours. The Kurobe Dam, completed in 1963, was an engineering marvel, the tallest in Japan, built by 10 million laborers through rock, ice, and tragedy. The concrete revolution was not only about survival, it was about identity. Each bridge, each tower, each train line whispered the same message. We are rebuilding, and we are not done yet. By 1980, Japan had become the world's second-largest economy. Tokyo's skyline glittered with corporate towers, and its subways carried millions beneath the neon glow of a futuristic metropolis. From devastation to domination, Japan had built a new kind of empire, not through conquest, but through construction. Every beam and bolt carried the memory of 1945, and the promise that nothing, not even total destruction, could stop the will to rebuild. By the dawn of the 1990s, Japan stood at the peak of its power. Its cities gleamed with glass towers, its trains were the fastest on Earth, and its technology shaped the modern world. But as the nation entered a new era, it faced a quieter challenge. Not how to rise, but how to evolve. The post-war miracle had built a fortress of concrete. Now the mission was to make that fortress intelligent, sustainable, and alive. In the early 1990s, Japan's economic bubble burst. Skyscrapers that had symbolized unstoppable growth became silent monuments to excess. Yet the collapse did not destroy Japan's will to innovate. It redirected it. The new question was not how high Japan could build, but how wisely. Urban planners, architects, and engineers began a transformation unlike any before, the shift from hard infrastructure to smart infrastructure. Tokyo led the charge. Its sprawling subway network was upgraded with real-time sensors, automation, and earthquake detection systems capable of stopping trains within seconds. In cities like Yokohama and Fukuoka, smart energy grids began balancing electricity flow between homes and factories, reducing waste and emissions. Japan had turned its mastery of machinery into an art of efficiency. Then came March 11, 2011, the Great East Japan earthquake. A magnitude 9.0 quake, the strongest in Japan's recorded history, struck the Tohoku region. Entire towns were swept away by a tsunami. Nuclear reactors failed. Nearly 20,000 people lost their lives. The disaster revealed both the fragility and the brilliance of Japanese engineering. Thousands of buildings collapsed, but millions more stood, their steel and concrete absorbing the shock. Tokyo, just 230 miles away, swayed but did not fall. In the aftermath, Japan didn't retreat, it reinvented. The nation embarked on what some called Reconstruction 3.0, an era of resilient smart cities designed not only to survive disasters, but to learn from them. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, 2015-2030, adopted by the United Nations and led by Japan, became the global model for urban resilience. New homes incorporated solar panels, hydrogen fuel systems, and quake-absorbing foundations. Entire districts, like Kashiwa no Ha Smart City near Tokyo, were designed as living laboratories, powered by AI, monitored by sensors, and built for sustainability. Meanwhile, Tokyo's skyline continued to evolve. The Tokyo Skytree, completed in 2012, rose 634 meters into the sky, the tallest structure in Japan. It was more than a communications tower. It was a symbol of precision engineering, designed to resist earthquakes with an ancient secret, a flexible central column inspired by pagoda design. Elsewhere, architects began blending tradition with innovation. Wood returned, not as weakness, but as strength. New technologies allowed architects to build mass timber skyscrapers, echoing the craftsmanship of old Japan while meeting modern sustainability goals. Today, cities like Tokyo, Osaka, and Yokohama are not just urban centers, they are ecosystems. Smart traffic systems adjust to congestion in real time. Energy grids talk to homes. Public buildings are powered by renewables. Robots deliver medicine in hospitals. Drones inspect bridges and towers. Even as Japan faces aging populations and natural threats, its construction philosophy remains clear: adapt, rebuild, improve. From the wooden temples of Nara to the neon streets of Shibuya, every era of Japan's history has been defined by its architecture, a mirror of its spirit. The modern skyline may glitter with glass and light, but beneath it lies something older and deeper, the belief that no disaster, no failure, no storm can erase the will to begin again. Japan's cities are not monuments, they are living organisms, and as the world looks to the future, one truth endures. The art of building is not about reaching the sky, but about standing tall after the fall. Japan has been built, destroyed, and rebuilt more times than the world can count. Each era left ruins, and from every ruin, the nation rose again, From wood to steel, from silence to neon, from tradition to technology, the Japanese spirit has turned fragility into strength and loss into beauty. The art of building here is not measured in height or speed, but in the courage to begin again. For Japan, rebuilding is not recovery, it is identity.